From dams designed to drain entire seas to a pyramid over twice the size of the Burj Khalifa, let's take a look at the most ridiculous mega projects ever proposed. The Transatlantic Tunnel. Way back in 1865, French author Michael Verne wrote a story about people traveling from Boston to Liverpool, England, in an impossibly long underwater tunnel. He imagined massive submerged pneumatic tubes with carriages inside that would be propelled forward across entire continents by bursts of compressed air. It's an interesting idea, but it's not something we can actually build, right? Well, recently, people have seriously considered taking on the gargantuan task of building a 3,500-mile tunnel connecting New York to London. For reference, the famous Channel Tunnel from London to Paris is just 31.5 miles. But building a regular old train line isn't gonna cut it. A commercial airplane can travel at over 500 miles per hour, whereas the Eurostar, which operates through the Channel Tunnel, can only hit 100 miles per hour when it's underwater. So for a journey over 100 times longer, you're gonna need something much faster. While Verne's concept used concentrated air to propel the carriages, one popular idea goes in the opposite direction. In 2004, Professor Ernst Frankel and MIT researcher Frank Davidson envisioned a unique underwater tunnel system for crossing the Atlantic. Their idea involved placing and connecting sections of a neutrally buoyant tunnel 150 to 300 feet below the ocean surface and anchoring it to the seafloor, so it would remain at this depth and avoid the crushing pressure of deeper waters. Inside the tunnel, air would be removed to create a vacuum, and superconducting magnets placed along the track at strategic points beneath the train to suspend the carriages in the air through repulsive forces. In order to move the train, other magnets would be activated both in front and behind to simultaneously pull and push the train in the same direction. Because the carriages wouldn't ever touch the track, there'd be zero friction, allowing them to travel at hugely increased speeds, possibly up to a staggering 4,000 miles per hour, more than 4 times the speed of sound. Suddenly, you've taken an 8-hour flight and reduced it to just under 1 hour. The biggest issue, however, is finding someone to fork over the cash to pay for it. Frankel and Davidson estimated the total cost at up to $175 billion, which is over $290 billion today. But most modern experts expect the actual cost to be much more and ballpark the project at a mind-blowing $12 trillion. On top of this, it could take 100 years to finish and use 1 million tons of steel. Oh, and the tunnel would need to be constantly monitored for hazards like, whales, as well as built in a way that earthquakes wouldn't damage. So until someone can figure out how to overcome these huge hurdles, this mega project will remain just another pipe dream. Atlanthropa. Let's travel back to the 1920s when German architect and engineer Hermann Sorgel proposed what could be the most ambitious or ridiculous mega project in history: to dam and drain the Mediterranean Sea, transforming it into a new continent he called Atlanthropa. What? Yep, the first step would involve constructing a 22-mile dam across the Strait of Gibraltar, which connects the Atlantic Ocean to the Mediterranean. With this essential straight block, the Mediterranean wouldn't have the Atlantic flowing into it, so he predicted the sea level would steadily dry up until it was lowered by some 650 feet. This would create a whopping 230,000 square miles of new land.
It's free real estate.
That's bigger than France. It would also form a land bridge between Africa and Europe, transforming the two continents into one huge Euro-African supercontinent. But I know what you're thinking. Why? Well, a couple of reasons. For one, power. At the time, people were worried about where all the energy to run the newly industrialized world was going to come from. Hermann looked to solve this. See, the remaining water would be dammed between Italy, Sicily, and Tunis, and further dams would be placed around Gallipoli and near the Suez Canal. At these points, large hydroelectric power plants would be built to utilize the dams to collect a truly staggering amount of power, potentially enough for half of Europe. Yet Herman had an even more ambitious goal: world peace. With the expansion of new land plus the connection between Europe and Africa, he was convinced that Lanthropo would foster a new age of unity and community. He believed that as well as the impending energy crisis, this new land would solve issues in Europe like unemployment and overpopulation. This may sound nice, but Herman's dream of uniting continents was far from selfless. He mainly saw Lanthropa as a way for Europeans to benefit from African land and resources. Unsurprisingly, the actual practicality was also far from perfect. As well as being likely to cost trillions of dollars, draining the Mediterranean would have a catastrophic impact on marine life. Besides eradicating vast swaths of habitat, as the water in the Mediterranean steadily evaporated and dried up, what remained would be far saltier and uninhabitable for a huge amount of the area's flora and fauna. And that's if the African territories it affected would even consider the outrageous proposal. Spoiler, they wouldn't. Not that it mattered to Herman. Regardless, he continued promoting his bold idea across Europe through the press, radio, and speeches right up until his passing in 1952. Thankfully, it died with him. Coney Island Globe Tower. Life is filled with millions of could-have-beens, but the Coney Island Globe Tower is the one that haunts my dreams the most. Back in 1906, entrepreneur and architect Samuel Freed announced the building of a massive tower with a globe-like top in Coney Island, Brooklyn. Designed in the same style as the Eiffel Tower, the Freed Globe Tower would have been an enormous structure built on lattice steel that stood 700 feet high. More than just visually stunning though, the sphere would also have been a hub for all kinds of entertainment. Suspended on 8 huge pedestals 150 feet off the ground, visitors would use giant elevators in the middle of the structure to access each of the globe's 11 floors, spaced at 50 feet intervals. The lowest levels would have featured bowling alleys, slot machines, a roller skating rink, theaters, restaurants, and garden. At 250 feet, there'd be a 5,000-person concert hall with 4 large circus rings and animal cages that would stage performances 24/7. The main level just above would house a massive ballroom and revolving restaurant encased in glass. Next would be a floor of hotel rooms, then a palm tree garden, and at the very top would be an observatory. At the time, this towering structure would have been the second tallest building in the world behind the Eiffel Tower, but had far more practicality. Any guesses how much it would have cost? Well, Freed reckoned it would cost around $1.5 million. A staggering $53 million today. Sure, it's a lot of money, but the Las Vegas Sphere, which is roughly the same size, cost about $2.3 billion to construct in 2023. Though that eye-watering price tag isn't the reason this thing never made it past the planning phase. The real reason is much shadier. In May 1906, the first cornerstones were laid with great celebratory speeches, live bands, and fireworks, which encouraged a huge rush of investors. Yet over a year later, Freed and his team were no closer to completion. By 1908, the reason was clear. Everyone had fallen for one giant scam. There was never any intention of building this globe. Instead, the funds had been used to line Freed and his accomplices' pockets. And while some of the people involved were convicted on embezzling charges, Freed himself seems to have gotten away scot-free. Man, and it looked so cool. I guess the Freed Tower should be renamed the Fraud Tower. Palace of the Soviets. Not every megaproject needs to be built for a practical purpose. Sometimes they're purely to show off. Following the establishment of the Soviet Union in 1922, leadership started planning a new administrative center, one that symbolized their victory during the Russian Revolution. After more than 10 years and multiple design competitions, the Palace of the Soviets was conceived. Architect Boris Iofan won with the neoclassical design that towered above all others, standing at over 1,000 feet. If that wasn't impressive enough, a colossal 300-foot statue of former leader Vladimir Lenin was set to stand on top. That's twice as tall as the Motherland Calls statue in Volgograd and a whopping 3 times larger than the Statue of Liberty. Counting the top of Lenin's Head, the palace would be the new tallest building in the world, beating out the Empire State, and it would have an interior to match. With more space than Manhattan's 6 largest skyscrapers put together, and capable of holding 21,000 people, it was the ultimate testament to the phrase, "Go big or go home." Plans were made to build this mega-scraper only a 15-minute walk away from the Kremlin, where it would be visible from anywhere in the city. And they even demolished the Grand Cathedral of Christ the Savior to build the palace in its place. This was a big mistake. Construction began in 1935, and it took until 1939 to finally complete the foundation. But 2 years later, in 1941, Germany invaded, and the palace was put on permanent hold. Understandably, all the building materials that would have gone towards it were instead diverted to help with the war front. After the war, Soviet leadership decided to pivot by building in its foundations, wait for it, the world's largest swimming pool instead. Yeah, a bit of a difference, right? Opened in 1960, it contained 140,000 square feet of water and entertained locals all year round. But it wasn't to last. After a public movement calling for the restoration of the cathedral, the pool was abandoned and the cathedral rebuilt in 1995. If you ask me, it was the right decision. Talking of good decisions, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of my amazing future uploads. And now, more ridiculousness. The Mega City Pyramid. There are countless ways to design a city, but have you ever seen one built vertically? Introducing the City of Tomorrow, the Shimizu Mega City Pyramid. In 2004, Japanese architectural and civil engineering firm, the Shimizu Corporation, along with designer Dante Bini, proposed this bold new project as a solution to overpopulation. They wanted to build a truly enormous pyramid right in Tokyo Bay. Picture the already big Luxor Pyramid in Las Vegas, and now multiply it by 55 and stack all 55 on top of each other. Yeah, the external structure would be built from super strong hollow mega trusses big enough to house special transport pods that would take people around the city. From these beams, numerous skyscrapers would be suspended of all shapes and sizes. If completed, it'd be the largest man-made structure on Earth, with a peak reaching a staggering 6,500 feet high. That's more than double the height of the Burj Khalifa, the current tallest building. As such, it could house over 750,000 people across 240,000 housing units. Pretty wild, right? But as well as alleviating some of Greater Tokyo's overcrowding issue, the pyramidal city is also designed to be highly economical. The pod system would remove the need for any oil-guzzling cars, and the framework would be painted with a photovoltaic film to convert sunlight into electricity to power the city. So I know what you're thinking. What went wrong with this one? Well, you know, the massive trusses that would hold the whole thing together. To bear the weight of an entire city and not completely collapse, they'd need to be made from super strong, lightweight materials that incorporate things called carbon nanotubes. These tiny tubes are 100 times stronger than steel, largely because of their atomic structure. But right now, we don't produce anywhere near the amount required for something as behemoth as the Shimizu Mega City Pyramid. Even so, the pyramid is still technically supposed to start construction in 2030, though I've not seen anything to suggest that plan will actually happen. Even if it did, it's not estimated to be completed until 2110. So many of their bold ideas could easily have become outdated by the time they're implemented. And the last thing they want is for this mega city to be as obsolete as some other famous pyramids. The Earth Scraper. Mexico City is one of the most vibrant places in the world, but it's one that's quickly running out of space. Current regulations prohibit demolishing historic buildings and limit new structures to just 8 stories. So why not try and take a whole new approach to building design, like, I don't know, making a massive skyscraper that goes down instead of up. In 2010, Mexican architecture firm Bunker Arquitectura proposed digging a huge underground structure 65 stories into the earth. This 82,000 square foot inverted pyramid would sit in the middle of Mexico City's main square, the Zocalo. Equipped for 5,000 people, their proposed design has the first 10 floors used as a museum dedicated to the city's history. The next 10 would be for retail and housing, and the remaining 35 would be commercial office space. At the very top would be a massive glass ceiling/window to allow in natural light, though tough luck for those on the bottom floor. Bunker Arquitectura set the estimated building cost at roughly $800 million. While not pocket change, this is roughly in line with what it'd take to make a regular skyscraper. Despite this, it doesn't seem as if their proposal grabbed the Mexican government like they'd hoped, considering there's no current plans on actually digging. Honestly, I can't really blame them. There's something slightly dystopian about thousands of people living and working deep underground. Only time will tell if this pyramid ever sees the light of day. The Downtown Circle. Everyone knows about the world's tallest building, the Burj Khalifa, but it could soon seem run-of-the-mill compared to what Dubai's got planned next. Envisioned by architecture firm Zenera Space in 2022, the Downtown Circle is a staggering 1,800-foot tall city in the shape of a ring surrounding the entire downtown area of Dubai, with the Burj Khalifa at its epicenter. Affixed to 5 gigantic pillars, this 2-mile-long lasso could supposedly be Dubai's solution to a range of problems, including housing density and traffic. How? Well, check out what they've got planned inside. Futuristic-looking commercial space would be weaved amongst high-end residential blocks spread across 5 stories. Connecting the floors would be a massive continuous green belt they call a sky park. More than just a scenic walkway, this grand feature is envisioned as a self-contained ecosystem with recreations of natural habitats, including lush forest, canyons, sand dunes, swamps, caves, and even waterfalls. This cross of housing, commerce, and cultural spaces is meant to feel like one incredible interconnected metropolis. What's more, the circle also aims to be entirely self-sufficient, able to harvest rainwater and solar power and even filter pollutants from the air. Damn, is there anything this circle can't do? Well, get made. Despite Zenera's lofty ambitions, this gravity-defying project faces near insurmountable hurdles. A structure at this scale would take decades of planning, billions of dollars, and groundbreaking engineering innovations, and it's not like Dubai has a shortage of megaprojects they're working on right now. You could call the circle up high in the sky, or more fittingly, a donut in the sky. Moon World Resort. Have you ever wanted to experience the wonder of space travel combined with the high-end comfort of a luxury hotel? No? Well, you will after seeing the upcoming Moon World Resort. This proposed 5.5 million square foot globe made to look like the moon is my dream getaway. Although while it is staggeringly big, it's still only 1/75,000th the size of our actual moon. With a proposed budget of $5 billion, the resort promises a truly out-of-this-world vacation. 4,000 hotel suites will be built inside the proto-moon, each equipped not with windows, but electronic backdrops that can display various different space-themed views to enhance the experience. There'll also be a 2,500-seat theater, 75,000 square foot spa, a giant shopping center, nightclubs, restaurants, ballrooms, and a 10,000-seat arena. Phew, but if you think that sounds cool, you ain't heard nothing yet. The upper part of the structure will house a replica shuttle station, and for $500 you'll be able to have a casual spacewalk on a model lunar surface. That's about 500 times less than actually going to the moon. So is there any chance of this actually being built? Well, yeah. In fact, there are several of these crazy resorts being considered in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Las Vegas, Spain, and China. Suddenly, the actual moon doesn't seem all that appealing. I mean, can't even enjoy a mojito up there. Germania City. Back in the 1930s, the German government, yep, that German government, started planning the most outlandish city construction project ever. The plan? To raise a huge section of Berlin and start building a new capital over it. This is the story of Germania. German architect Albert Speer was the one chosen to lead the project. During the design process, Speer rejected modern influences, preferring classical stylistic elements and national symbolism. To suit this new design philosophy, he planned to destroy between 50,000 to 100,000 houses and transform Berlin beyond recognition. Among the many planned designs, one of the most mind-boggling was a gargantuan-sized Great Hall called the Volkshalle. Inspired by St. Peter's Pantheon in Rome, the towering dome would have been 950 feet high and 150 feet wide. To give you a sense of just how big that is, the combined breadth of the Volkshaw's 180,000 person audience would have been enough to create condensation on the dome's ceiling. In turn, this would have formed actual indoor clouds and potentially even rainfall. Breathy rain sounds pretty disgusting. And the rest of the city wouldn't have fared much better. Instead of the dynamic city we know today, Berlin would have been turned into an egotistical monument to its own power with big empty spaces, gargantuan buildings, and a chaotic road system because Spears didn't believe in traffic lights or trams. Navigating would have been a nightmare, and visitors to the city would have probably felt equal parts frustrated and intimidated. Plans were well underway up until the outbreak of World War II, at which point things were put on hold. By the end of the war, any dreams to finish Germania were truly dead and buried. One of the few remaining relics from this massive undertaking is a single heavy load pillar in South Berlin. It was part of a prototype for their own version of the French Triumphal Arch that would have been 3 times its size. Talk about overcompensating. Space elevator. For over half a century, we've been building massive gas-guzzling rockets to get into space. But there might be another way. First imagined in the late 19th century, a space elevator envisions a 25,000-mile-long cable extending from the Earth all the way out into, you guessed it, space. Despite sounding absolutely crazy, the elevator would actually be a pretty simple design. The whole thing would only be made up of 4 parts: the cable, the counterweight at the top to maintain tension, an anchor on the ground, and the elevator-like climber to carry things up or down. But how much would something like this cost? Well, estimates set the sticker price at between $10 to $100 billion. Pretty pricey, but don't lose hope just yet. One of the biggest costs of current space travel is the fuel it takes to overcome our planet's gravitational pull. NASA estimates that the 2 solid rocket boosters used for just one launch burn 11,000 pounds of fuel per second, adding $60 million per launch. You could skip that entire process by simply lifting the thing right into space on an elevator. Considering the US alone launches 133 crafts into space a year, a space elevator could pay for itself in only a few years. Despite that, it'll be a while yet before we see any construction actually start. The biggest setback right now is making a cable that could withstand the staggering strain of being in geostationary orbit. Its tensile strength, that's how much strain it could handle before breaking, would need to be 60 times stronger than steel, which makes it another perfect candidate for carbon nanotubes. But the ones we can produce aren't quite right yet. Another issue is knowing where exactly to build this towering structure. Pick the wrong spot and it could wind up being damaged by hurricanes, tornadoes, or other weather hazards like lightning. Even so, some corporations reckon they'll be able to successfully put the first space elevator into operation before 2050. Onwards and upwards. Crystal Island. Located on a small piece of land along the Moscow River, Russia has begun planning the construction of a massive crystal island 5 miles away from the Kremlin. It's not literally made of crystal, but imagine a huge tent-like steel megastructure covered with a shimmering sloped skin hanging over apartments, offices, stores, theaters, hotels, and public spaces. Its flashy design is 4 times bigger than the Pentagon and reaches a peak of almost 1,500 feet, making it slightly taller than the Empire State Building. If finished, it'll be the biggest building in the world, though it's more like a city within a city. But outside of looking cool, what's that tent thing all about? Well, it's sort of like a high-tech breathable skin sporting things called enclosure panels slotted into the structural framing. These will be equipped with cutting-edge technology that can modify the internal temperature to keep the area below warm in the winter and cool in the summer. In other words, it'll be like a city with its own adjustable microclimate. The tent will also be powered by various green technologies, including solar panels and wind turbines. But now comes the big question. When is it going to actually get built? While initial designs were released as far back as 2007, the project was postponed after backers bailed during the 2009 global financial crisis. Add to that Russia's recent sanctions and the fact it's forecast to cost a dizzying $4 billion, and Crystal Island is seemingly out of reach for the foreseeable future. Forgotten Fortune. If you ever find yourself exploring the mountains at Spanish Fork in Utah, you might stumble across this strange abandoned building leering through the bracken. While it's been left untouched for over 50 years, this mysterious relic is actually a century-old megaproject built to find long-lost treasure. Let me explain. Back in 1894, a member of the Church of Latter-day Saints named John Hiram Coyle claimed to have received a vision from an angel while asleep. The angel told him to purchase an abandoned mine in a nearby mountain and start digging for gold treasure that had been buried there centuries ago. The gold was apparently left by the Nephites, a group of people mentioned in the Book of Mormon who supposedly came to America from Jerusalem around 600 BC. When he awoke, Coyle told others about his dream, and captivated by it, they became his loyal followers. In 1909, they established the Coyle Mining Company and started digging. For years, they dug deeper and deeper, but to no avail. By 1913, other church members were starting to get suspicious of Coyle's vision. One local even wrote an article in the paper saying almost everyone has heard stories of how such and such found a rich mine by following directions given in a dream, but in most instances, such stories have little or no foundation in fact. Talk about a call-out. Despite the bad press, they kept digging, steadily developing the mining infrastructure as they did so, but after decades went by with still nothing to show for it, Coyle got himself into serious trouble. In 1947, he was called in front of a Mormon disciplinary council and forced to make a choice. Either he could sign a statement admitting his prophecies were false, or he'd be excommunicated from the church. Coyle signed the paper but rescinded the confession just a year later, claiming it was forced. Because of this, he was excommunicated and passed away soon after. However, the dream mine would live on. The Relief Mine Company was founded in 1962 and continued using Coyle's mine over the next decade until, that is, they hit bedrock and were finally forced to stop. Following this, the mine was abandoned. Yet people still buy stock in it to this day, believing that one fine day the precious gold will be revealed. Only a fool would do that though, right? I definitely didn't put all the revenue from my last 50 videos into it. Now I'm curious, which of those insane mega projects do you think has the best chance of actually getting finished? Let me know down in the comments, and thanks for watching.